Hello everyone and welcome to Briar Rose Cottage. My name is Ray and I'm in the middle of making some drop scones, orange and currant. Basically, anybody who knows how to make biscuits, you add about 3/4 to a cup of milk plus your juice and your fruit and whatever into, and a little bit more sugar. And then you mix it all up. It will be like cake batter, but then you put spoonfuls on onto a cookie tray. I use parchment paper. It helps keeps my cookie trays clean, and you don't have to grease or anything. Cookies and stuff just slide off. So these ones are fresh out of the oven. You know, bake them for about 10 minutes. Orange and currant drop scones. So yes, I am here to talk about recipes today in the 21 days of Yule and memories of recipes. Every year I have specifics that I make every single year, and that's pound cake and sugar cookies and gingerbread, brownies. I eat brownies all through the year, but I really like to have brownies at Christmas time. Mincemeat tarts and shortbread if I can get it just right. Pound cake and shortbread I use actual butter for, because it's a treat, and I only have it like once a year as a general. Pound cake's expensive, especially now. It's an old English pound cake recipe. It's been in my family forever. I think it was in a Rogers Flour cookbook, but unfortunately that was lost when Mom died, so I don't know where where the actual original recipe is from. But it's called pound cake because it takes a pound of everything in it except for the spice that she put in it, which is mace. Mace can live forever in the refrigerator. That's expensive, and you only use a little bit. I don't bake with mace a whole lot, so I keep my little can in the refrigerator, and it's been good from year to year to year. If you're just opening a brand new can, ease up a little bit on it because it is quite powerful, but as time goes by it settles down, and then you can just use the regular amount. But it's a pound of butter, which is an entire brick, a pound of flour, which is like 2 cups, 2 cups of sugar, 9 large eggs. Now that is the trick here. Most baking recipes, unless otherwise stated, take large eggs. So if you're trying to reduce the cholesterol and all that kind of stuff that come from eggs, you might, by using smaller eggs in your baking recipes, you might reconsider not doing that and just eating less baking. Because of the fact that when you don't use what the recipe actually calls for, you reduce, especially with eggs, you reduce, just checking my time on timer because I got 11, you reduce moisture content and bulk content. And when it came to the pound cake recipe many years ago, because I always share this with friends, a friend of mine, she had problems, and it wasn't until I was visiting her that I found out why. She said her farm eggs were large ones, but when I bought eggs to have while it was there, I bought large eggs because that's what I always buy, is large eggs. And I measured, and the large egg was like about this. This was the large egg. This was her farm egg. which was about a medium-sized egg. Now, the problem with that is there is a chance that when she made this recipe and put her 9 eggs in there, that she shorted herself by about 3 eggs, which means the pound cake is going to come out dry and kind of crumbly. There isn't going to be enough to bind it and hold it together other than the flour. Had she put in at least a dozen of these medium-sized eggs, she probably would have had a better result. So when it comes to recipes, especially when you're starting out, use the exact ingredients and sift flour until you know what you're doing. One of the things I do with flour is, especially with sugar cookies and gingerbread cookies and anything that's rolled out, I cut back the actual amount of flour that I put in it. If the recipe calls for 3 cups, I put 2.5 cups. And I save that half a cup for rolling the cookies out in. Oops, cancel. Baking. Baking. That one's done. And so yeah, the drop scones look like that before they're baked. This one over here on the, I got the island all cleaned off, so now I have this baking station. Anyways, I use that because I often don't sift my flours. A lot of recipes are better when you sift the flour, but I don't bother. I'm just one of these ones, let's just slap everything. So stuff I make isn't quite as good as it could be, but it's still really good because I don't use the full, especially in rolling. A few things where it doesn't matter is like my fudge brownies, my snack cake recipe, because I often put like banana in it or something, or carrot, or I over measure the water. It's just 3/4 of a cup of water and I end up putting a cup of water in it. So there's a little tiny bit of wiggle room when it comes to baking, but you need to be careful because it is so easy to screw things up, and anybody who makes bread understands how, or pie dough, understands exactly how easy it can be to mess up stuff. Bread's big secret is sea level. The farther you're away from the sea level, that affects how yeast does its thing with flour, and you can end up with denser loaves of bread. I have had nothing but problems since I moved to Alberta with bread not being light and fluffy in the way it's supposed to be. It's still good. It still tastes really good, but I've had nothing but problems. Whoops, timer 8. That's the other thing that's handy. I use the timer on the microwave, but you can use the one in your phone. It is so easy to get distracted, especially now these days, and I have the head issues. Use the timer. Turn the volume up on your phone or whatever, and learn to listen for it. In the past, I have actually been able to tell how baked things were by the smell. I actually surprised several people with that. But now I can get distracted. So I have a tendency not to watch TV when I'm baking, so that I don't forget cookies in the oven. Oh my goodness. You can eat burnt cookies, but they don't taste the same. Just scrape the stuff off the bottom. There's I have a few people who like overdone cookies, so just as long as they're not like burnt. So if you can get rid of the burn, then you're styling. Okay, so yes, when you're doing baking, do your baking, make it your thing, and have fun with it. I got a bit of dough on my, or flour or something on my hand. Oh, there we go. And enjoy yourself, and don't be afraid to make jumbo. If that's the last in the bowl, make a jumbo one for yourself. The reason there haven't, and then we'll go here, been any videos the last couple of days is because I got sideswiped with arthritis and head issues that gave me all sorts of symptoms that ended up having me sleep for basically 2 days. So I not making videos then. And I've had several people, yeah, take care of yourself. So that's what I did. I just take care of myself and breathe and relax and not worry about stuff. Okay, so the other thing that's kind of cool about parchment paper is, besides the fact that it can be used where you can put your candy, chocolate candy stuff on here, it won't stick. You can put it on top of your turkey. Helps cook a beautiful, beautiful turkey. And this is compostable. So when I'm done with it, I throw it in my little bucket to go outside, along with my eggshells, and like I had the orange peel, and I just threw it all in there. I use lard. That's another thing that I find makes recipes taste better. The two things that make recipes taste better are the natural oils, and I use, I've been buying this oil to make that snacking cake with. It is so much better for you. It's got way more nutrients in it. So yes, this is, whoops, there we go. Welcome to Canada, where you have 2 languages on labels. So yes, this organic extra virgin first cold press olive oil. It comes in a plastic bottle, and it doesn't affect the taste of the outcome of the baked item. I use it in my pancakes, and nobody can tell that I'm using a strong flavored olive oil. So it's worth spending the extra money because it's just way more healthier for you than the corn oils or the saff oils or the safflower oil or whatever, those kinds of oils. And that's what I use. Lard is rendered pig fat. So it comes, there's nothing chemically done to it as far as I know. It is just pig fat that is melted down, and as gross as that may sound, it works better in biscuits, pie dough, and all sorts of other things. It just has a better taste than shortening or even margarine, which are chemically done stuff too, and that's why sometimes when you're using those, things don't taste right. Also, margarine has salt added into it, and that salt can affect how your recipe tastes in the end. I often will short recipes that have salt in them a little bit to allow for the salt in the butter. And I do the same in the margarine. And I do the same thing when I use butter. Now use butter in your brownies. Spoil yourself every so often and do that. Make one with margarine, make one with butter, and you'll be able to actually tell the difference, especially if you use unsalted butter for your cookie recipes. You can absolutely taste the difference. But some of the reasons why things don't taste as good with, checking the time, with your baking is because margarine already has stuff in it that if you're adding more of in your recipe, you could be doubling up on like things like the salt. So bear that in mind. So so those are some baking tips of things I have learned over the years. And definitely when making pie dough, use lard. It just, I don't make the prettiest looking pies on the planet, but my dough, the crust is usually flaky and maybe crispy. Like I said, I don't make the prettiest, and that's because of the lard. Mom's recipe also, instead of using a lot of water, we use some vinegar and egg instead, and that adds to the flavor of the dough. But lard is the go-to. You can work it and work it and work it, and it doesn't turn flour into this hard mass. Put those back in for about a minute and a half. Timer 1, 3, and 0, start. Just to make sure the centers are done. So yeah, I hope I'm not talking too fast. I'm just trying to remember everything. When it comes to baking, make sure your eggs are the right size. So you can get the volume you need in your recipe. Spend a little bit of money and spoil yourself and use butter instead of margarine, olive oil, the good oils instead of the safflower, the corn oils and things like that, that it's very questionable as to whether they're not really any good for us at all. When making sugar cookie, when you're making your hard dough cookies versus soft dough cookies, cut the flour by a little bit. You should notice a difference in the taste, because often we put too much flour down on the board when you're rolling whatever you're rolling your dough out on. And remember, that dough, that flour goes into the dough. And that can affect the taste of things. And don't be like me, sift your flour. You can get away with it, but some things deserve to have sifted flour. And use parchment paper. Unless you've can afford to get those Silpat things. They're this rubber plastic thing you put on top of your cookie sheet. And those things work really well. And you can use those for baking things. But I myself prefer parchment paper. I'm not exactly sure what it's all made with. Don't use wax paper. The wax can come out of the paper. It can burn in the oven. Parchment paper doesn't burn. And and then you have that wax in your baking. Use wax paper for craft projects. I find wax paper is really good when I've done snowflakes with cotton thread and I need to stiffen them with glue water. Often it doesn't stick, depending on the type of wax paper I use. And then it won't stick to my cork board that I use to stretch everything out on. Yeah. So helpful hints today. And as always, just using the traditional recipes for the season. I love using the family recipes, ones that work, that people have been using for years and years. They're tried, you know, they've been tested. You know, they're not often they're not fancy. And then there's just that history, you know. And a lot of this stuff doesn't take a long time to do up, so it's just getting off our phones, I think. Getting off the TV, the video, the games, the whole night. I'm making time to bake because there's nothing like the fresh out of the oven stuff, you know, versus the stuff that comes from the store. Like a lot of the stuff that comes from the store, I can tell that it's like way sweeter than anything that I make at home. And there's the rub. Stuff I make at home, if I want to, because I've been baking for a while, I can reduce the amount of sugar in something. I know exactly how much to back up on the sugar. Like my fudge brownie recipe, I've discovered not only can it be made gluten-free with corn flour, it can be made with cocoa, and I would often use the vegan margarine, and so it's dairy free too as well that way. So that's something else to think about when you're buying it, when you're baking versus buying, is often store-bought stuff has 1,000 other things in it than a simple homemade recipe. You know, there's like maybe 6 ingredients in my brownie recipe altogether. Whereas if you look at the ingredient list on a store-bought brownie package, you could end up with like 12 to 20 different ingredients, and some of it is just stabilizers to keep the product preservatives, just so it can sit on the shelf longer, and that kind of thing. So when we're being kind to ourselves, because that was the theme for this year, was being kind to ourselves, sometimes being kind to ourselves is slowing down and spoiling ourselves with stuff that we used to have, the way things used to be. When our grandparents and some of our parents, depending on how old you are, were growing up and then raised us. I do think it's actually sad that whole food to do baking and cooking with is more expensive than processed food. And processed food is so full of salt and sugar and preservatives and things like that, that I don't know how all that chemicals and things is cheaper than real food. So it's sad. So in this holiday season, take time out and spoil yourself and relax and breathe, and don't cut some corners just to save some time so you got 5 more minutes to play your game on your phone. You know, it's a great tradition to do with grandkids, with kids. I know Rice Krispie squares taste so much better homemade than those store-bought ones. So they do. make Rice Krispie squares, then eat and do a taste test, and you'll find they taste chemically to me anyways. So maybe if you're raised on that, who knows, but I wasn't. One of the benefits of being a welfare child was all of that stuff was too expensive and my parents wouldn't buy it. So on that note, taking a deep breath, it is time to move over to the Yule tree and do that, because I have 3 days now of doing that. So I'm going to pause the video and go over there, turn some lights on, and deal with that and show you guys new ornaments and what chocolates, and hopefully they won't all be the fudge ones, because then they're all going to be gone. So as I tip forward, I've got baking Smurf on an apron my brother made me several years ago. Do try to remember that, keeping clean. Okay, I only had to go a short little distance, so I wasn't gone for very long. So last time for December 1st we had the moon, and for December 2nd I didn't fix Santa Claus, but we got Santa Claus. I think this time I will pick a pink one for the 3rd. And I got the coconut one, the Raffaello. That's cool. And there's my box. And we'll reach in here. Oh, what the heck. Let's hang Groot. Groot is like my favorite one. So Groot is hung up, and he's through December 3rd. I'll take some pictures because this is not very clear. Let's swing around and take this lavender one. Lavender. I'm going to save these all for like my dessert after supper. Which is going to be an old standby. We're having wieners and craft dinner type stuff, and canned beans. That's another fudge one. And what do I have in here? We'll hang up this red bell. Which actually does quack. I got these at like the dollar store years and years and years ago. So don't be afraid to shop at the dollar store for some decorations and things like that. Okay. We'll take that purple one right there. Oh, ribbon hung up. And like I said before, I have been saving this so I can reuse this if I want to next year. Oh, we got another coconut one. So that's cool. I really like those ones. And let's see. What do I want to... how about we put on the bowl? So today's for December 5th is the bow. Whoops. December 4th is the bell. And oh yes, December 3rd Where are we here? Right there is Groot. So, thank you for joining me today. Peace, love, and happiness. I hope that I didn't talk too fast and that you were able to understand me today. And that my baking tips were helpful. Because 'tis the season to be merry. La 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 la, and that means food too. So, again, peace, love, and happiness. Thank you to all my subscribers and anyone who watches my videos. Happiness and joy to everybody. See you hopefully tomorrow. Bye for now.